The rain hammered against the stained glass of the old Episcopal church in Greenwich Village like it was trying to drown out the organ's final mournful notes. Victoria Sinclair gripped the edge of the wooden pew until her knuckles whitened, her breath catching in her throat as the casket lowered into the earth beyond the window. 10 years. That's how long she had buried this part of herself. The part that loved Charlotte with a fire that could scorch the sensible world she had built brick by conservative brick. And now, with her mother's body 6 feet under, the inheritance loomed like a ghost she could no longer outrun. She felt Charlotte's hand brush hers under the hymnal. A fleeting touch that sent a jolt through her veins. Warm and forbidden. But Victoria pulled away, her heart twisting into knots. Not here. Not now. The lawyer in her, the one who had argued multi-million-dollar cases in mahogany-paneled courtrooms, knew the terms of the will by heart. Her mother's fortune, the sprawling estate in the Hamptons, the trust funds that kept her practice afloat, all hinged on one clause: marriage to a man of good standing, heirs to carry on the Sinclair name. Lesbian love? It was the unspoken scarlet letter that would strip it all away. As the mourners filed out, umbrellas blooming like black flowers in the downpour, Victoria lingered. The scent of lilies clung to the air, heavy and cloying. She pressed a palm to her chest, feeling the rapid flutter beneath her ribs. Charlotte waited by the door, her dark curls damp from the rain, eyes searching Victoria's face with that quiet patience that had sustained them through stolen weekends in anonymous motels and coded texts that read like legal briefs. "Vic," she whispered when they were finally alone, her voice a soft anchor in the storm. "We don't have to do this alone." Victoria turned, her tailored black dress suddenly too tight, too proper. She wanted to fall into Charlotte's arms, to let the world shatter around them. But the weight of expectation pressed down, heavier than the rain. "I have to," she said, the words tasting like ash. "The reading is tomorrow. If I don't play this right." She trailed off, a sigh escaping her lips, ragged and defeated. Charlotte stepped closer, her fingers tracing the line of Victoria's jaw. A touch that spoke volumes of the nights they had mapped each other's bodies in the dim glow of hotel lamps. They had met a decade ago at a charity gala in Midtown Manhattan. Victoria in her power suit, fresh from a win against a corrupt developer. Charlotte curating the art exhibit that adorned the walls. One glance across a crowded room, Charlotte's laugh cutting through the din like sunlight through fog, and Victoria's carefully ordered world tilted. They talked until the caterers packed up. About Rothko's voids and the injustices of zoning laws, their knees brushing under the high-top table. By dawn, in Charlotte's tiny walk-up in the East Village, they were tangled in sheets, whispering promises that tasted of forever. But forever came with strings. Victoria's mother, Eleanor Sinclair, had built an empire on old money and older prejudices. Her will a fortress of conditions. "The family legacy demands continuity," she had said once. Her voice clipped over high tea at the plaza. Victoria had nodded, swallowed her truth, and hidden Charlotte away like a guilty secret. Weekends in the Catskills, posing as best friends on family holidays. The ache of proximity without claim. Charlotte had endured it, her artist soul finding beauty in the fragments. But Victoria saw the toll in the late-night sketches left on the kitchen table. Faces blurred with unspoken longing. Now, standing in the church alcove, rain pattering on the roof like impatient fingers, Victoria felt the dam crack. "What if I lose it all?" she murmured, her voice barely above the whisper of silk against skin. Charlotte's eyes, deep brown pools reflecting the gray light, held no judgment, only the steady flame of love that had outlasted boardroom battles and gallery openings. "Then we build something new," Charlotte said simply, her thumb brushing away a tear Victoria hadn't realized had fallen. "From the ground up. Just us." The drive back to the city was a blur of windshield wipers and silence thick with unsaid words. Victoria's sleek Audi cut through the Holland Tunnel, emerging into the neon haze of Manhattan at dusk. The skyline rose like jagged teeth, indifferent to the unraveling below. Charlotte stared out at the passing lights, her profile etched in shadow. While Victoria's mind raced through scenarios: contest the will, fabricate a fiancé, sell her soul for the keys to the kingdom. But each path led back to Charlotte, the one constant in her ledger of losses. They pulled up to Victoria's Upper West Side apartment, the doorman nodding solemnly, oblivious to the storm brewing inside. The elevator ride was torture. Inches apart but worlds away. As the doors closed, Charlotte finally spoke. Her voice steady but laced with the tremor of exhaustion. 10 years. Vic. I've been your shadow. Your alibi. I love you enough to let you go if that's what it takes. But God. It hurts. The words landed like punches, each one echoing in the confined space. Victoria's breath hitched, a sob clawing its way up. She reached for Charlotte's hand, this time holding on as if it were the only lifeline in a sea of regret. I don't want to let you go, she admitted, the confession spilling out like wine from a tipped glass. I built my life around hiding us. And now it's all I have left. The elevator dinged, doors sliding open to the hushed corridor lined with Persian rugs. They stumbled into the apartment, the door clicking shut behind them like a verdict. The space was all clean lines and neutral tones, a sanctuary of restraint that mirrored Victoria's facade. Charlotte kicked off her heels, padding to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, now a dark expanse dotted with lamplight. Victoria followed, shedding her coat, the fabric pooling at her feet like shed skin. She wrapped her arms around Charlotte from behind, chin resting on her shoulder, inhaling the familiar scent of jasmine and rain. Tell me what to do, she whispered, her voice breaking on the edge of plea. Charlotte turned in her embrace, hands framing Victoria's face, thumbs tracing the high cheekbones that had graced so many society pages. You fight for what matters, she said, her gaze fierce and tender all at once. Not the money. Not the name. Us. Their lips met then. Soft at first. A question. Then deepening into the hunger of years denied. Victoria tasted salt, her own tears mingling with the kiss. And for a moment, the world narrowed to the press of bodies, the shared rhythm of breaths quickening. They sank to the rug, the city humming beyond the glass, a distant chorus to their unraveling. Charlotte's fingers worked the buttons of Victoria's blouse with deliberate care, each undone a small rebellion against the chains of expectation. Skin met skin, warm and yielding, and Victoria let out a sigh that was half relief, half anguish, her body arching into the touch she had craved in secret for so long. I love you, she breathed against Charlotte's neck, the words a vow etched in the quiet hours. As they lay spent, tangled in the aftermath, the phone buzzed on the coffee table, the lawyer's curse in the dim light. It was the estate attorney, voice clipped and efficient. MS. Sinclair. The reading is at 9 sharp tomorrow. Be prepared. Victoria stared at the screen, the glow casting harsh shadows. Charlotte stirred beside her, hand finding Victoria's in the dark. Whatever comes, she murmured, we face it together. Sleep came in fits, dreams haunted by her mother's stern gaze and the echo of Charlotte's laugh fading into fog. Dawn broke gray and unrelenting, the city stirring to life below. Victoria rose first, brewing coffee in the sleek kitchen, the ritual a thin armor against the day. Charlotte joined her, hair tousled, wearing one of Victoria's Oxford shirts that hung loose on her frame. They ate in silence, toast crunching under knives, eyes meeting over steaming mugs with the weight of unspoken fears. The law office was in a towering glass monolith on Park Avenue, all polished marble and echoing footsteps. Victoria arrived early, Charlotte opting to wait at a nearby cafe, her presence a quiet rebellion against the solitude of pretense. The conference room smelled of leather and old money, portraits of stern-faced partners lining the walls. Relatives trickled in, Aunt Lydia with her pearl clutch, Cousin Edmund nursing a scotch at 8 in the morning. They nodded condolences, their eyes flicking to Victoria with the subtle calculation of vultures. The attorney, Mr. Hargrove, cleared his throat. Spectacles perched on his beak-like nose. Eleanor Sinclair's last will and testament. The room fell silent. Breaths held like collective prayer. He droned through bequests, the beach house to a distant nephew. Stocks to charities with conservative bents. Then, the hammer. To Victoria and Sinclair. The bulk of the estate, including the Hamptons property and associated trusts, contingent upon her entering into a legally recognized marriage with a male partner within 1 year of my passing, and producing an heir within 5 years thereafter. Failure to comply results in forfeiture to the family trust, administered by Edmund Sinclair. The words landed like stones in still water. Ripples of shock spreading. Aunt Lydia gasped, hand fluttering to her throat. Edmund's lips curved in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Victoria sat frozen, the air thickening around her, her pulse thundering in her ears. A decade of deception. And it all boiled down to this: choose the woman she loved or the legacy that had defined her. She stood abruptly, chair scraping against tile, the sound unnaturally loud. "Excuse me," she said, voice steady despite the quake inside. The corridor blurred as she fled, heels clicking a frantic Morse code. Outside, the November chill bit at her skin, but it was nothing compared to the frost in her veins. Charlotte was there, as promised, 2 coffees in hand, her face lighting with concern at the sight of Victoria's pallor. They walked in silence up Madison Avenue, the holiday displays in shop windows mocking with their twinkling cheer, garlands of tinsel draping like nooses. Victoria's mind spun, clauses and contingencies tangling with the memory of Charlotte's touch the night before. "It's worse than I thought," she finally said, stopping beneath the awning of a bookstore, the scent of aged paper wafting out like a bomb. "Not just marriage. An heir. They want blood to seal it." Charlotte set the coffees on a wrought iron table, pulling Victoria into a shadowed alcove between buildings. Her hands were warm, grounding, fingers lacing through Victoria's with a firmness that belied the tremor in her voice. "Then we find a way around it," she said, her breath visible in the crisp air. "You're the best damn lawyer in this city. Argue your case." Victoria leaned her forehead against Charlotte's, eyes closing against the blur of pedestrians rushing by, coats flapping like dark wings. A sigh escaped her, long and weary, carrying the weight of board meetings and bedside vigils. "It's not a case. It's my life. Our life." The words hung between them, fragile as spun glass. Charlotte's laugh was soft, bittersweet, a sound that had pulled Victoria from the brink of too many deadlines. "Exactly. So fight like hell for it." They ended up in the bookstore, shelves towering like ancient oaks, the hush a temporary sanctuary. Charlotte wandered to the art section, fingers trailing spines of glossy volumes on impressionists and modern abstracts, her world of color and form. Victoria lingered by legal tomes, but her eyes strayed to a display of queer literature, covers bold with stories of hidden loves and hard-won freedoms. She picked up one, The Price of Salt, thumbing the pages, heart aching with the echo of her own concealed narrative. Over lunch at a corner bistro, steam rising from bowls of bisque, they plotted in whispers. "Surrogate," Charlotte suggested. Spoon paused mid-air, her eyes sparkling with that defiant spark Victoria adored. "Or adoption. Twist the rules." Victoria shook her head, a wry smile tugging her lips despite the knot in her gut. "Mother's lawyers are sharks. They'd sniff out the lie in a heartbeat." The conversation ebbed, replaced by the clink of silverware and the murmur of strangers, their knees brushing under the table in silent solidarity. Afternoon found them driving east, the city giving way to the Long Island Expressway, asphalt unspooling like a ribbon toward the Hamptons. The estate was a sprawling colonial, white clapboard against manicured lawns, the ocean a distant rumble beyond the dunes. Victoria had grown up here, summers of tennis lessons and cotillions, her mother's voice a constant refrain of propriety. Now, it felt like a cage, the key dangling just out of reach. They parked in the gravel drive, tires crunching softly, and stepped out into the salt-laced breeze. Charlotte inhaled deeply, her curls whipping in the wind, face alight with the raw beauty of it. "This place," she said, turning to Victoria with a grin that crinkled her eyes. "It's got stories in the walls." Victoria nodded, slipping an arm around her waist, the gesture bold in the open air. For a moment, no eyes watched, no judgments loomed. They were just two women. In love? On the edge of everything. Inside, the house echoed with ghosts. Dust motes danced in sunbeams slanting through leaded windows, the grand foyer clock ticking like a heartbeat. Victoria led Charlotte through rooms frozen in time, the library with its leather-bound volumes, the sunroom where Eleanor had hosted luncheons dripping with innuendo. She never knew, Victoria confessed, pausing at a faded photograph on the mantel. Her mother young and radiant beside a stern father. About us. I couldn't risk it. Charlotte touched the frame lightly, her artist's eye tracing the lines of joy and repression. But she loved you, she said gently, turning to pull Victoria close. That's something. Their embrace deepened, bodies fitting like puzzle pieces long separated. And Victoria felt the tension uncoil. If only a fraction. They made love in the master suite that afternoon. Afternoon light gilding their skin, the four-poster bed creaking under the weight of released inhibitions. Charlotte's whispers were poetry. Fragmented lines about light and shadow, desire and dawn, drawing moans from Victoria that echoed off the high ceilings. Dusk painted the sky in bruised purples as they dressed, the spell broken by the ring of Victoria's phone. Edmund. His voice was oily, laced with false sympathy. "Cousin? Thought you'd be here surveying the spoils. The will's ironclad. You know. Father's already drawing up papers." Victoria's jaw tightened, fingers clenching around the device. "Stay out of it, Edmund. This isn't your game." She hung up, the click sharp as a gavel. Dinner was takeout on the veranda. Lobster rolls from a local shack, the waves crashing a rhythmic underscore. Charlotte sketched idly on a napkin, capturing the curve of Victoria's profile against the fading light, her pencil strokes sure and loving. "What if we run?" she mused, half joking, eyes distant. "Sell everything? Move to some nowhere town in the Rockies? Open a gallery? You consult from a laptop?" Victoria laughed, a sound rusty from disuse, reaching across to squeeze her hand. "Tempting. But I'd miss the chaos." Night fell heavy, stars pricking the velvet sky. They walked the beach, shoes dangling from fingers, sand cool between toes. The tide pulled at their ankles, relentless and forgiving. Victoria stopped, the water swirling around her calves, and faced Charlotte, the moon silvering her features. "I can't lose this," she said, gesturing vaguely to the dark expanse of sea and sky. "Us. Not for money. Not for pride." Charlotte's response was a kiss, salt-tinged and fierce, sealing the pact. Back in the city the next week, routine asserted itself like a stubborn tide. Victoria dove into cases, her office a fortress of files and flickering screens, arguing motions in federal court with the precision of a surgeon. But cracks showed, distracted glances at the clock, coffee gone cold on her desk. Charlotte's gallery opening loomed, a vibrant affair in Chelsea, canvases bursting with color that mirrored her inner fire. Victoria attended, slipping in late, her suit a stark contrast to the bohemian crowd. She watched from the edges, pride swelling as patrons clustered around Charlotte's curation, her lover's voice weaving tales of inspiration and grit. A brush with Edmund at the bar soured the night. He sidled up, scotch in hand, breath sour. "Heard you're still single, Vic." Clock's ticking. His chuckle grated, eyes raking over Charlotte across the room. Victoria's retort was ice. "Mind your own legacy, Edmund. This one's mine." She walked away, heart pounding, finding Charlotte in a quiet corner, surrounded by admirers. One look, and the crowd parted. Charlotte excusing herself with a warm smile. They escaped to a rooftop bar nearby. The city sprawling below like a jeweled beast. Martinis sweated in the humid air. Condensation tracing paths like tears. "He's a vulture," Victoria muttered, staring into the olive-skewered glass. Charlotte nodded, her foot hooking around Victoria's ankle under the high top. "But you're a lioness." Roar louder. The banter lightened the load. Laughter bubbling up. Genuine and rare. They danced there. To the faint pulse of street music rising. Bodies swaying in sync. A preview of freedoms yet to claim. Yet doubt crept in the quiet hours. Victoria lay awake in the witching time. Charlotte's steady breaths a counterpoint to her racing thoughts. What if the fight cost them everything? The practice? The security? The fragile peace they had carved? A sigh slipped from her lips. Soft as a prayer. Stirring Charlotte. "Can't sleep," she mumbled, rolling to drape an arm over Victoria's waist. Thinking of loopholes, Victoria admitted. Fingers tracing patterns on Charlotte's arm. Or escape hatches. Morning brought resolve. Coffee brewed strong. Plans sketched on napkins over breakfast. "We can test," Victoria decided. Pen scratching decisively. Emotional duress? Undue influence. Mother's prejudices poisoned the intent. Charlotte's eyes lit. Supportive fire. "And if that fails?" Victoria met her gaze. "Steady. We walk away. Together." The words felt like wings. Tentative but real. Weeks blurred into a frenzy of depositions and document dives. Victoria's team pored over Eleanor's medical records, hunting for signs of dementia or manipulation. The Hamptons' house became a war room. Weekends spent amid stacks of paper. Takeout containers littering the oak table. Charlotte joined when she could. Her presence a spark amid the drudgery. Reading aloud from novels to break the tension. Her voice wrapping around them like a shawl. One evening, as thunder rumbled over the sound, Victoria found a letter in her mother's desk. Yellowed envelope addressed in elegant script. "To my daughter. On the day you choose." Hands trembling. She slid it open. Charlotte at her side. The words unfolded like a confession, regrets over rigid expectations. A plea for happiness over legacy. "Love as you must," it ended. "Forgive me." Tears blurred the ink. Victoria's shoulders shaking. Charlotte held her, rocking gently. The storm outside mirroring the one within. The courtroom in Riverhead was a relic. Wood-paneled walls scarred by generations of disputes. The air thick with the scent of wax and worry. Victoria stood at the plaintiff's table. Skirt suit crisp. Hair pinned back like armor. Across the aisle, Edmund lounged. His attorney a silver fox with a reputation for scorched earth tactics. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with silver streaks, banged her gavel. Calling order. MS. Sinclair versus the estate of Eleanor Sinclair. Proceed. Victoria's opening was a masterclass. Voice modulated. Weaving law with the raw thread of personal truth. "My client seeks to honor her mother's intent. Not the distortions of prejudice," she argued. Gesturing to the letter now enshrined in evidence. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Where family perched like crows. Edmund's lawyer countered with bluster. Decrying modern whims over tradition, but his bluster rang hollow against the document's quiet power. Recess brought chaos. Aunt Lydia cornered Victoria in the marble-floored hallway. Perfume cloying. "This is madness. Dear." "For that woman?" Her eyes flicked to Charlotte, seated steadfast in the back row. Sketchpad in lap capturing the scene. Victoria's response was steel. "For love? Aunt. Something you might understand if you looked beyond the pearls." She walked away. Pulse racing. Finding solace in Charlotte's waiting arms outside. Under a canopy of oaks shedding autumn leaves. The trial stretched days. Witnesses parading, the family doctor testifying to Eleanor's lucidity laced with loneliness. A notary recalling the will signing amid tears. Victoria cross-examined with surgical precision. Exposing the clause as a relic of fear. not foresight. Nights blurred into preparation. The Hamptons' house lit like a beacon. Coffee fueling all-nighters. Charlotte became co-pilot, researching precedents on her laptop. Her insights sharp as any brief. Here, she'd say, leaning over Victoria's shoulder, breath warm on her neck. Queer rights cases from the 90s. Leverage that. Intimacy wove through the strain. Stolen moments in the library. Bodies seeking refuge amid leather and lamplight. One night, after a brutal deposition where Edmund accused Victoria of unnatural alliances, she shattered. Curled on the rug before the fireplace, flames dancing shadows on her face. Sobs racked her frame. "What if they win?" she whispered. Voice muffled against Charlotte's chest. Charlotte stroked her hair. Murmurs soothing. "Then we rebuild. Brick by loving brick." Their lovemaking that night was slow. Reverent. A reclamation of self amid the siege. Fall deepened. Leaves carpeting the grounds in crimson and gold. They escaped one afternoon to a vineyard in North Fork. Rows of vines heavy with grapes. The air sweet with fermentation. Tastings in a barn converted to chicory. Laughter flowing freer than the Merlot. Charlotte's cheeks flushed. Eyes bright. To victories. Big and small, she toasted. Clinking glasses. Victoria pulled her close behind a trellis. Kiss hidden by foliage. The world narrowing to the taste of wine and want. Back in court. The tide turned. The judge's questions probed deep. Her gaze lingering on the letter. Intent matters, she mused during sidebar. Robes rustling. Edmund's team faltered. Their appeals to tradition crumbling under scrutiny. Closing arguments dawned crisp. Victoria's words a crescendo, legacy isn't blood or bonds of paper. It's the courage to love wholly. As my mother wished in her heart. The gallery held breath. Charlotte's hand clenched in her lap. Nails biting palm. Adjournment came swift. The judge promising deliberation within the week. Victoria emerged dazed. Reporters clustering like flies. Flashes popping. She waved them off. Seeking Charlotte's face in the crowd. Their eyes locking across the frenzy. A nod. Subtle. And they fled to the parking lot. Collapsing into the car with exhales that bordered on laughs. "You were brilliant," Charlotte said. Hand on Victoria's thigh as they merged onto the highway. A force. The drive home was charged. Windows down. Wind whipping hair. They stopped at a roadside diner. Neon buzzing, open 24/7, ordering pie and black coffee. The vinyl booths cracked with history. "Remember our first road trip?" Charlotte reminisced. Fork-piercing crust. "That dive in Jersey? Pancakes at midnight." Victoria smiled. The memory a warm glow. "You drew the waitress?" Said she had a poet's eyes. Laughter shared. Easy. A reminder of joys untainted. Winter whispered in. First snow dusting the city like powdered sugar. Victoria's practice hummed. New clients drawn to her tenacity. But home was the true hearth. Charlotte's gallery buzzed with a holiday show. Sculptures of intertwined forms evoking their story in abstract grace. Opening night. Victoria mingled. Arm-linked with Charlotte's openly. Defying the whispers. Edmund sent a bottle of scotch. Note attached, to the widow's weeds. She poured it down the sink. The glug therapeutic. Deliberation dragged. Each day a taut wire. Victoria paced her office. Phone glued to ear. While Charlotte countered with walks in the park. Bundled against chill. Hot cider steaming from cups. "Breathe," she'd say. Pausing by the Bethesda fountain. Angels frozen mid-flight. Whatever the ruling. We're the real inheritance. Victoria leaned into her. Scarf muffling a sigh. The truth seeping in like thaw. The call came mid-morning. Hargrove's voice gruff. "You win? MS. Sinclair. The clause is voided. Full estate to you. No strings." Elation surged. Then crashed into sobs. Victoria sinking to her knees amid case files. She called Charlotte first. Words tumbling. "It's ours." All of it. Charlotte arrived in minutes. Gallery forgotten. Wrapping her in joy that tasted of victory and vindication. They celebrated quietly. Dinner at a French bistro in the village. Candlelight flickering on crystal. Toasts to absent mothers. To hidden years. To futures unbound. Charlotte's foot traced Victoria's calf under the table. Promise in the touch. Later. In bed. Bodies entwined. Whispers wove dreams, renovations to the house. A studio for Charlotte overlooking the sea. Perhaps a foundation for queer artists. Turning legacy to light. But shadows lingered. Edmund's appeal loomed. A specter in the wings. Victoria met with her team. Strategies sharpening like blades. Charlotte joined a strategy session. Her outsider's eye spotting flaws. Humanize it, she urged. Not just law. Heart. The advice stuck. Infusing briefs with narrative pull. Spring teased with crocuses pushing through snow. A metaphor Victoria clung to. They weekend in the Berkshires. A cabin rental amid maples budding green. Hiking trails that wound like veins. One summit. Vista sprawling. Victoria dropped to one knee. Ring box trembling in hand. Marry me, she said. Voice cracking. Not for show. For us. Charlotte's yes was a sob. Kiss sealing it under endless sky. The appeal hearing was in Albany. State capital grand with marble and might. Victoria argued solo this time. Confidence honed. Edmund's side flailed. Their case threadbare. The panel's questions favored equity. Nods to evolving norms. Victory echoed the first. Cleaner. The estate secured beyond doubt. Summer bloomed. Hampton's house alive with change. Walls painted soft blues. Charlotte's art dotting shelves. They hosted a small wedding there. Beachside. Waves lapping bows. Friends from gallery and bar. Aunt Lydia absent but a card arriving, be happy. Dear. Rings exchanged. Simple gold. Promises etched eternal. Life reshaped itself in the afterglow. The inheritance not a chain but a canvas. Victoria scaled back her hours. Partnering with a firm focused on civil rights. Cases that echoed her own battle. Mornings now started slow. Coffee on the terrace. Charlotte's head on her shoulder. The city awakening below. This, Victoria would murmur. Gesturing to the steam curling from mugs. This is the real win. Charlotte's gallery expanded. A second space in Brooklyn. Walls alive with voices long silenced. She curated shows on hidden histories. Queer pioneers in paint and print. Victoria attended every vernissage. Pride swelling as Charlotte commanded the room. Her passion a magnetic field. One night. Post-opening. They wandered the bridge to Manhattan. Lights reflecting on water like scattered stars. You make me brave, Victoria confessed. Hand in hand. The span arching above. Challenges came. As they do. Edmund's bitterness festered. A lawsuit over a minor bequest dragging months. Victoria handled it with weary grace. Mediation in neutral offices yielding compromise. Let it go, Charlotte advised over wine one evening. Feet in lap on the sofa. He's poison. Victoria nodded. Releasing the grudge like a breath held too long. The relief palpable. They traveled west. Route 66 unspooling under tires. Motels with neon signs evoking their early days. Grand Canyon at sunset. Vast and humbling. Hands clasped on the rim. Infinite, Charlotte breathed. Awe in her voice. Victoria pulled her close. Wind-tugging hair. Like us. Laughter echoed. Free. The decade's shadows shrinking in the light. Back east. Autumn painted the Hamptons gold. They renovated the guest cottage into a studio. Sunlight flooding canvases. Charlotte painted there. Victoria posing in morning robes. Capturing vulnerability in oils. Your eyes, Charlotte said one day. Brush paused. They hold storms and sunrises. The portrait hung above their bed. A daily reminder of seen souls. Winter brought quiet joys, holidays with chosen family. Tree trimming to jazz. Ornaments of their making. New Year's in Times Square. Bundled against cold. Countdown blending with cheers. Midnight kiss. Confetti swirling. Victoria whispering. To decades more. Charlotte's reply. Soft against lips, unhidden. Whole. Spring unfurled with purpose. Victoria launched the Sinclair Foundation. Grants for LGBTQ artists and advocates. First check to Charlotte's gallery. The launch gala in the house. Chandeliers gleaming. Toasts to transformation. Edmund appeared. Uninvited. Glass in hand. Victoria approached. Extending olive branch. Truce. He paused. Then nodded. The fracture mending in mundane grace. Summer saw them mentoring, Victoria clerking for a young lawyer battling bias. Charlotte guiding interns through curation's chaos. Evenings on the porch. Wine cooling. Stories swapped of triumph small. One night. Fireflies dancing. Victoria turned thoughtful. I hid us to keep this, she said. Waving at the sprawl. But you were always the treasure. Charlotte's smile. Radiant. And now we're rich beyond measure. Years layered like patina. Softening edges. They adopted a rescue dog. A scruffy mutt named Legacy. Romps on the beach forging new rhythms. Trips multiplied, Tuscany's hills. Kyoto's blooms. Each stamp a chapter. At 45. Victoria reflected in journals. Words flowing freer. The inner depths plumbed. Charlotte's 60th neared. A milestone marked in the mountains. Cabin rented again. Snowshoeing trails. Breaths puffing clouds. Pausing at overlooks. Still my adventure, Charlotte said. Mittened hand in Victoria's. Laughter rang. Echoing the first. Elder days crept gentle. Aches in joints but fire undimmed. The house adapted, ramps added. Gardens tended by helpers. Afternoons reading aloud. Voices weaving tales. Hands entwined. Victoria's practice retired. Legacy in protégés. Charlotte's walls echoed in museums. Her eye immortal. On a crisp fall morning. Years woven tight. They sat on the veranda. Ocean sighing below. Victoria's head rested on Charlotte's shoulder. Breath synced. No regrets, she asked. Voice thin but sure. Charlotte turned. Eyes still that deep brown pool. Only that we waited so long to claim it. A kiss. Soft as memory. Lingering. The end came peaceful. Charlotte first. Slipping away in sleep. Hand in Victoria's. Grief hollowed. Then filled with gratitude. The life they built a bulwark. Victoria scattered ashes on the dunes. Waves claiming gently. Until again, she whispered. Wind carrying it. Alone but not. Victoria carried on. Foundation thriving. Stories told. Friends visited. Laughter echoing halls. In quiet hours. Sketches surfaced. Charlotte's lines alive. She smiled then. Heart full. The legacy endured. Not in stone or stock. But in love's quiet revolution. A decade hidden bloomed into lifetime seen. The mothers passing the door to dawn. And in that light? Victoria found peace. The humanistic hum of a life well loved. Echoing eternal.